Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Usually it takes me 2 or 3 takes just to warm up, but tonight I predict we'll get it on the first take.
And we always get it on the first take. We have to.
You do?
Sure, this is live television.
Live? What does live mean?
It means at the exact moment you're cavorting and leaping around that stage over there, 20 million people are seeing it.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Mr. Swan, you're white.
You mean it all goes into the camera lens and then just spills out into people's houses?
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with the rather dynamic and lively David Cohen.
Dynamic and lively.
There we go. That was Peter O'Toole, 1982, my favorite year. And why did I play that clip? Any ideas?
Because we're going to be talking about, allegedly, Saturday Night Live.
Yes, and comedy. Live sketch comedy.
Live sketch comedy.
Yes, because this past year we witnessed the 40th, believe it or not, 40th anniversary of Saturday Night Live on the air. I mean, is that a surprise? It really
yes.
It shouldn't be, because sketch, well, in some ways, but sketch comedy's been around since like Julius Caesar's Bacchanal. You know what that is?
I have no idea.
Well, through the Middle Ages.
I have a feeling we're going to hear about it.
We're going to hear about it. That was his big party. He would have a big party every so often, and he'd bring the dancing girls, and the sketch comedy would, believe it or not, exist back then. Through the Middle Ages, traveling troops of thespians, jokers in the courts of England and France and throughout Europe until the modern days, where we've got radio and everything old is new again. But before then, we've got Abbott, Costello, Edgar, Burgen, Charlie McCarthy, to Cid Caesar and your show of shows on television. So when done right, sketch comedy is always, I think, fun. When done right. This week we examine the history of sketch comedy in general, and then the modern form, Saturday Night Live.
Modern form for television. Yes.
Well, where else is it now? Is it really? I don't see. Where else is sketch comedy? I guess you got what the Groundlings or whatever.
If you left your house, and you went out into the world, you'd see that. Yeah, sketch comedy is pretty big around certain bigger towns. It's done live, and you actually go.
Well, is it that
no,
improv?
Follow me here. You get
stuff?
in your car, right, and you drive to this venue, and you get out of your car. You walk into the venue. They sit you down, and it's happening right before your eyes.
Is it that? Okay, tell me an occupation. Okay, anybody?
No, not improv. No. They actually do sketches. They actually pre-written, pre-rehearsed sketches.
Nowhere outside of New York City, I'm going to bet you. Let's take.
You're going to what?
I'm going to bet you.
Betcha
that there's nowhere outside of New York City.
I beg to differ. But,
all right, let's see what happens. I have to tell you that it started, or some representation of this starting, even way back with W.C. Fields and Edgar, Burgen, Charlie McCarthy on the radio.
Are you eating a tomato, or is that your nose?
Is it true, Mr. Fields, that when you stood on the corner of Hollywood and Vine, 43 cars waited for your nose to change to green?
No way, you woodpecker's lunch.
So it's just the interaction between two people and all of that. It got a little more detailed when there was, let's see, Abbott, Costello and who else? Martin and Lewis were on the Colgate Comedy Hour. Let's just peek into that for a moment, just to see the history a little bit.
Boy, what makes you so dumb?
I don't know, it just comes to me naturally.
Didn't you ever go to school, stupid?
Yes, sir, come out the same way.
Sure.
You know, you asked me a lot of silly questions. Why don't you ask me a nice question instead of the hard one?
All right, will you answer it before we start?
Yeah, no, a nice question.
All right, say you have $5 in this pants pocket and $5 in that pants pocket. What have you got?
Somebody else's pants on.
There you are.
All right, so you've heard these are set up joke. That was an introduction to the Colgate Comedy Hour. There were lots of skits that were performed. That was 1951 in the early 50s. So that's not like Saturday Night Live created this.
No.
Right? And I don't know if you're familiar. There's some DVDs out there on YouTube. A show that's kind of overlooked, that I think is the grandfather and the pillar upon which Saturday Night Live is built upon, is your show of shows.
Yeah, that was pretty big.
And that was Cid Caesar, Jean Coca, right? And right. Rob Reiner.
Yep.
It had tons of...
Carl Reiner,
I'm sorry, the father of Rob Reiner. Tons of writers. It was only on for 4 years. But if you take the time to watch a couple of those skits, they're very creative, very clean, funny comedy. No?
So I could argue Laugh-In was also a precursor to Saturday Night Live, because there was a lot of sketches there, too. It wasn't live, but it was a lot of it was sketch comedy.
Right, I agree, absolutely, and different every week. It wasn't like they repeated the same, like Honeymooners episode or what have you. It was different sketches, different setups, different jokes. That's a lot of work. Yep. And then, like as Peter O'Toole in '82 represented in that great movie, my favorite year. Oh, wait a minute. Sometimes you've got actors, even on Saturday Night Live, especially that are movie stars or on television where there's a lot of takes. And wait, this is live? What's that?
It's going out to millions of viewers.
I mean, we got to do a show on that movie alone. I don't know. Am I wrong? Is that not one of the best?
Oh yeah, it was one of my favorites. Which movie?
My favorite year. Let's listen to a little bit of your show of shows.
Sit down, don't let him bully you. Get this through your head, old boy. If I wanted to go out with him, I'd go out. And if I feel like holding his big fat hand, I'll hold it. I'll kiss his big fat face.
Not really that funny if you think about it, but you have to see it. It's a couple arguing in a movie theater, and Cid Caesar's an innocent guy sitting next to this girl just being sucked into this nonsense, which happens a lot. And that's what they did. You tell me, some of the most, to examine this cerebrally is, some of the most fun comedy is kind of just picking out stuff that we all have lived through and just overacting it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that you could relate to and that you might have even experienced. Yeah, and just go over the top with it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and so at the end, just watch that skit. I used to hear my father back in the 60s say, "Oh, Cid Caesar was the funniest man on the planet," And I don't know if you saw him in the movies and stuff in the 80s and 90s. I don't think he was all that funny to me. But when you watch this show, you can see the genius of him in live. Like he
was in his element then.
Yes, right? When he had to rehearse and do a performance on a TV show or in a movie, I don't think it worked at all. You tell me. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I'm not the only one. That show inspired Dick Van Dyke. That's Carl Reiner created Dick Van Dyke and said that was based upon your show of shows. My favorite year, the movie we heard is based upon or influenced by your show of shows. Laughter on the 23rd Floor. If you ever saw that Neil Simon play, was influenced by that. Neil Simon was one of the writers of your show of shows. He had quite a number of talented writers there. So it's existed. Let's go a little bit more into Cavalcade of Stars. Jackie Gleason, 1952.
I have to watch what I eat. Oh, why don't you stop that? Clem, why don't you eat like me? I stick my fork into anything. If it don't scream, I eat it.
Jackie Gleason, Art Connie, 1952 to 1970. They just did skits comedy. That's a loudmouth at a bar. Let's just skip to a little more modern. That's not modern, but a little more modern. Carol Burnett in the 70s, a little Star Trek.
Jim! I think there's something wrong with me. Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a... Well, I guess I am a doctor. Come on, let's have a look. Stop it. It's just all too much. I can't stand this constant bickering. Captain, Vulcan logic has been overwhelmed by a flood of powerful and conflicting emotions.
I mean, that's Andrea Martin, and all the men in the ship have become females. And
Andrea Martin, who became part of Second City television, which also was sketch comedy, but again, pre-taped.
Exactly. But, yeah. And she was on Deep Space Nine as well.
But the Carol Burnett show was also sketch comedy.
It was tremendous sketch comedy. We'll come back, and the groundwork has been laid for Saturday Night Live. We'll talk about that when we return. Everything old is new again.
Victory Lawrence.
Now, when you were growing up, did you watch that Carol Burnett show with the skit comedies?
Oh, religiously.
Yeah, every Saturday night, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And Tim Conway would try to break up Harvey Korman all the time.
Yep.
And those I think that show was a little more creative than some of the others. They did parodies of movies and TV shows,
right. But
they also did some unique new type of setups, if you're in an airport and you're trying to, to get through security, and before all the problems we had now, they had that going on. They had unique characters with the old man with Tim Conway, and I don't know. Did you see that past history now influences Saturday Night Live to this day?
Yeah, absolutely. But Laugh-In did too. I mean, Ruth Buzzy on Laugh-In doing the the recurring character she did with the operator.
Right.
One ringy dingy, two ringy dingy.
So why is it now? There was Second City TV in the late 70s and 80s, and Saturday Night Live. Why is there nothing else around similar?
Well, I think there is, and we talk about the radio, we talk about TV, but and I joked with you before about getting in your car and going to see sketch comedy, but it's also on the internet. I mean, there are a lot of sketch comedy groups that are just producing stuff that you can see on YouTube and other means. So it's out there. I think there are just other channels to look at it. What Saturday Night Live has going for it is just it's the tradition, like you said, 40 years.
Right. You had the Wayans show, Damon Wayans, back, and there was In Living Color.
In Living Color, right? You had Friday. What was
Fridays?
It? Fridays was a big one
with
Michael Kramer from Seinfeld.
Yeah, Michael Richards. So it has existed, but Saturday Night Live is the undisputed king. I would say at this point.
Right. It's the longest running show.
It doesn't mean it's the best, though.
No.
And we'll get into that on Everything Old is New again when we return.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night. It's Saturday Night Live.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again, and that is from the original first performance of Saturday Night Live in 1975. That was Chevy Chase announcing live from New York. He did that for, I think, 2 years, and it may have been just 1 year.
I think it was 1 year.
Yeah, just 1 year, and he got out. Don't know why he left. He left for the movies and became successful. Then he came back, by the way, and there was a fisticuffs between him and Eddie and Bill Murray. They had words because Bill Murray replaced Chevy Chase, and Chase is not the most amicable guy apparently, and Bill Murray was the new guy and egged on by the not ready for primetime players to get into fisticuffs with Chevy Chase. And they did that right before Chevy Chase did a show as the host when he came back.
Really,
a little trivia there. But Saturday Night Live has been around. Lorne Michaels created it with Dick Ebersol, and I don't know if it's perfected the craft. People say it has. I think it's gone through highs and lows. It has produced tremendous highs, and I think now we're in a bit of a low, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not really that attuned to it the last 5 years, but I've seen it go up and down, up and down. It's been so much fun through the years. What's your overall impression? Like, would you say you'd watch any season, or does it matter who is on the show?
Well, I mean, 40 years is a long time to be running. I do not watch the old shows. I just tune into the new ones if I see there's a good host, or, if there's a cast where I like some of the cast members. Like, I think now they have a pretty strong cast. So I'll actually watch it now. But it's more about the memorable bits. It's not like we used to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to watch the whole Saturday Night Live show. I mean, it's a different era now. If you miss the show, you don't DVR it. The next day, you just pull up whatever the funniest sketches are on the internet, and you just watch those.
Right. You used to sit and watch the whole thing, listen to these catchphrases became real popular as a result,
Too early for cheeseburger? Look! Cheeseburger, 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 cheeseburger. No Coke, Betsy.
You're spending the night with Fred Jarvin, male prostitute.
You must stop the bleeding!
Jane, you ignorant slut.
You've got Dan Aykroyd did the last couple as Julia Child and as the news anchor against Jane Curtin. And I mean, I just remember, again, when anything's new and when you're young, it has a different impression. But I remember the first 4 or 5 years of that show. Again, it was one of those shows. It was a different world because you couldn't DVR it and you couldn't tape it. You had to watch it. So everyone was at the TV on a Saturday. Think about it, on a Saturday night.
Well, it appealed to younger people, not as young as we were, but it appealed to a young generation. They wouldn't go out until after SNL was over, or
Which
they would
is 1 o'clock,
right? Or they'd stay home and watch the show. So it was appealing to a whole new generation, and it was edgy, unlike the way TV had been prior to that.
Yeah, we talk about Carol Burnett was great and everything, but it was prime time. This is not ready for prime time, right? This is 11:30. They can kind of be a little more edgy, if you will. And then they got involved with music too. Great musical guests or great music from their cast, like Bill Murray's the lounge singer.
Chicago, how many people in Las Vegas tonight are from Chicago? Could we hear from you?
God bless you. I really dig Chicago, one of my favorite towns. Really like it out there. See, I have some relatives in Chicago. I really should be looking them up. Well, if you're from Chicago, there's a very real chance you'll be singing this song tomorrow. Those raindrops keep falling on my head.
I mean, that was like everybody would do that at the water cooler. Everybody imitated Bill Murray. He's just going on too. And not only that, you would hear like Gilda Radner being imitated like crazy.
Now, I'm depressed, I gained weight, my face broke out, I'm nauseous, I'm constipated. Mr. Fader, you sound like a real attractive guy.
Of course, Bill Murray was on the that time frame. Dan Aykroyd, Garrett Morris, of course John Belushi. It was just a great mix to start this franchise off. But the problem was then towards the it was about like 82. They all left to do movies and did things beyond this show. They only lasted four years for the main cast. Now what? Now, if you remember, that show almost died with the next cast.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for Eddie Murphy, and I hate to say, Joe Piscopo as well, if it wasn't for those two who were not touted to be the stars of the next cast, forget it. The show would have gone by the wayside. But instead, Eddie Murphy came along and continued the tradition.
Hello, boys and girls. You know Christmas is a special time in Mr. Robinson's neighborhood. It's a time for giving. And look what Mr. Landlord gave me. It's an eviction notice. Well, that's why Mr. Robinson has to wear this Santa Claus suit to sneak in and out of his building. But it just isn't a disguise, boys and girls. And when I add this little bell, it becomes a small business.
Now, if I remember, he was, I think, 19 when that show started.
Wow.
And he has... built a career from that, of course. He was 19 years old. And he was on the show from 80 to 84. And I don't know if you remember that. That was like the next, oh my God, he was a superstar.
Well, you and I were going to a comedy club when we were in high school, Eastside Comedy, and he was one of the regular comedians at this comedy club. And he would crack us up every time we were there. And then suddenly, I remember, he just wasn't there for a while.
Right.
And then you put on the TV Saturday Night Live, and I'm like, oh my God, there he is.
Exactly.
He's on the
all
cast.
These guys. He did Gilbert Gottfried. It was a failure of it, but he got cast. We saw him at Eastside Comedy Club, right. And it was just amazing that it was a different world too. There was a lot of comedy clubs throughout the country, and a lot of comedians. It was thought as a little bit of a way to make a profession, if you will, for yourself. And had a great breeding ground for that. You also have a representation or an appreciation for what came before by Saturday Night Live. They never ignored, let's say, Cid Caesar or any of the past comedians. They'd have them on if they want to be, and they knew that they built upon that foundation. And Joe Piscopo introducing Cid Caesar.
Cid Caesar, welcome to our show Saturday Night Live.
It feels like I never left.
Well, you're kind of like a father to us all.
You can't pick up a phone and call once in a while. What's wrong?
I mean, Cid Caesar, again, watch some of his stuff. We're going to pick an all-star team for Saturday Night Live players if we were picking, let's say, 6 or 7 of the prior actors and comedians from that show later on. If you could go outside the bounds, I bet you a lot of people would say Cid Caesar would be the number 1 pick.
Could be.
He was very versatile, very physical, very funny, did characters.
Yeah.
And one thing you have to remember is, yes, the shows have writers, but these comedians are comedians and are kind of controlling their own destiny. They like this character, they don't like this character. They're proposing the character, and the writers amplify it. There are fights in the writers' room as to whose character is better or what skit is better and what's going to get on. They're writing a lot of their own stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's curious and interesting the way that developed. And I don't know. I think Saturday Night Live has done it very well. I think that you're going to have anytime you're going to have lows. But I can't believe, and we'll talk about this in the next section, this Gilbert Gottfried. I think, not now, but his stand-up comedy that we saw in the late 70s at Eastside Comedy Club in Melville, New York, was over-the-top, hysterical, funny stuff that we'll play in a few minutes that it did not translate. You know, there are some people that were on that show, it just doesn't work.
And this was before he was Gilbert Gottfried, as everyone knows him now. You know, that cranky old voice he does. He was just speaking normally. He didn't have that persona developed, and he was incredibly hilarious.
And he was very different. Like a lot of comedians talk about, you know, a setup and a punchline, and talk about their families or talk about commonality. He would talk about things like Stonehenge. He would talk about history. Right. He'd have these odd references. And I think that's when he was at his best. I know people like him now. I think his stand-up is where he's best. And some people, that's where it's at. That fellow Rocket, what was his name? Charles Rocket. You know, he was supposed to be the star of the second group of people.
Really?
And he was very upset that that Piscopo and Eddie Murphy became the stars of that group. And that's why, if you remember, one time he actually cursed on the air and was kicked off the show as a result. And that was a result of his ultimate frustration, from what I understand, with the show not being the star.
Look at Chris Rock, right? Great stand-up, but I don't know. Do you remember much of what he did on Saturday Night Live?
Not really. Right. Not at all. Even Jimmy Fallon. I mean, you know, a couple of songs that the guitar he did, he was not that good on Saturday Night Live. I don't think.
No,
but
I don't think
there
so
was
either.
talent there. It just doesn't translate all the time to skits.
Right.
We'll come on back.
Side by side, you are my amigo. Living in perfect harmony.
Say, Charlie, why the arm in the sling?
Yeah, I walked straight into that busted street sign in front of Frank's Automat.
Well, you must have been really sore at him.
You said it, pal. I said, say, what's a big idea of making a fella trip out there? I was going to sock him right in the kisser.
He's all wet. Why, you ought to sue him, Charlie.
I have half a mind to do just that. But where am I going to get that kind of dough?
Say, I know a fella just got me out of a big jam, and he didn't break the bank.
You don't say.
Yeah, the law office of Douglas Viviani.
The law office of Douglas Viviani?
That's right, the law office of Douglas Viviani.
Viviani.
That's what I said, Viviani.
He a straight shooter?
He's a cat's meow.
He's on the up and up?
Doug's ace is with me.
Is that so?
He's a bee's knees.
Well, that's just swell. You have his number?
You can call him at 631-681-1910 or email him at vivianilaw.com.
Wait, what was that last part?
What, email?
Yeah, what's email?
vivianilaw.com.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything old is new again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
I gotta tell you, darling, from the bottom of my heart, you look impressive. You up close, I tell you, you look marvelous, darling.
Thank you very much.
It's fabulous, you know, and for me, I would rather look good than to feel good, and you know who you are. You look marvelous, darling.
All right, so the early 80s, that's Billy Crystal, and we were back on Everything Old is New Again. The producers said, let's hire some known comedians, and they hired Billy Crystal, and they hired Martin Short. They did 1 year. He wasn't always live. They did a lot of, on Saturday Night Live, they did a lot of these videos, and it was funny. That was part of it, but we're talking about Saturday Night Live and trying to kind of focus on what is special about Saturday Night Live, what is something that makes it different than what was before. And I think some of that is the creation of new characters like Dana Carvey has done through the years.
Today on Church Chat, we're going to be discussing Satan. You remember him, don't you? The Prince of Darkness, the Antichrist, the Beastmaster. Probably rings a little bell in your head now, doesn't it?
Once again, I am Hans. Yeah, I'm Franz, and we are here to pop you off.
No way. Wait. No way. Wait.
I think, that it comes to mind is that each generation, maybe it's not generational, but each section of the audience at a certain age when you're watching this show, whoever's on the show, if they're doing it well, those are your people.
Right.
And, we recognize the original crew and kind of maybe have an affinity to them. The Dana Carvey crew with Mike Myers.
That was great. I love them.
Tremendous, right? So that was a great high time for the show. Then there was a low time, and then Chris Farley came along with that crew. And
I live in a van down by the river. I'm here to tell you that you're probably going to find out as you go out there that you're not going to amount to jack squat.
I mean,
that's maybe my all-time favorite sketch from Saturday Night Live.
Really? And why do you say?
Oh, it was so funny.
It's never not funny.
He was
right?
larger than life, and just the reaction of the other cast members in that scene alone, just they were cracking up.
And one time he breaks the table, he falls, he's so excited, he breaks the table, and just memorable stuff. So it's there for all of us. Why? Let's listen to Will Ferrell a little something.
Cha-cha-boochie, cha-cha-cha-boochie, roll call.
I'm Ariana. I have Team Spirit. I don't do drugs, so check me out.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
We remember that. Will Ferrell with the shirt showing his belly, getting the cowbell. I mean, some of this stuff is, again, that's a different group, right? Different groups come in. So we talk about the groups now. You're hopped up about the group now. You feel that they've got some.
Yeah, I think the current cast is actually quite talented. I thought the cast before them was pretty talented too, but this one, I have a really good feeling there are going to be some big stars coming out of the current
I always
cast.
want that to happen. I always have trouble when they end one section of one group, and the beginnings of a new group to me sets me back, and I don't know if I want to invest in this or not and all, but I should, because they do seem to produce some good results from time to time. I want to just go back. We talked about just for a moment, then we'll get back to that. But we just talk about Gilbert Gottfried for a second.
Yeah.
Just check out, because we mentioned it. I want to just complete the sentence, if you will. Listen to his stand-up.
I was here when they built Stonehenge. I was walking through England, all of a sudden I heard, "Watch your back, please." And I turned around and saw weird creatures carrying huge black slabs across the landscape. And one of them handed me a clipboard and a pen and said, "Can you sign for this, please?" I said, "I don't think I'm authorized. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do." And they said, "Well, look, then we're leaving it here. You see the way it is? Two over there and one on top. He can stay like that for eternity." Last week, I was having lunch with Charles Manson. And in the middle of lunch, he turned to me and said, "Is it hot in here or am I crazy?"
Come on, who uses Charles Manson and Stonehenge for comedy pieces?
Yeah.
And then he's got, I don't know if he doesn't do this anymore. Then I remember sitting there at Eastside Comedy Club with you in 1979 probably, watching him then pull out a pair of glasses and critique himself, critique his comedy.
A joke to me is like, did this ever happen to you? And if it happened to you, then you applaud and it's funny. And then, do you remember this? And if you remember it, that's the joke. And how many times did this happen to you? And you go, "Oh, a number of times." Okay. That to me is who I pay to see.
And then he'd have that character, like he'd say a joke, and I can't do the whole thing on the radio, but he would say a joke, and then he'd have that character say, "Well, that's not funny. Where's the comedy?"
Yeah, he was like heckling himself on the stage, long before Jim Gaffigan started doing it. But that night, I remember, we saw him a few times. So one night, he was on such a roll. I remember they just let him go, and he was on for a very long time, and everything he said, he ran out of material, but everyone was they just wanted so much more from him. I remember he looked back and on the wall behind him, and he looked back and he looked at this little nail in the wall, and he goes, "Oh, you are a nail." "Yes, I am a nail." And everybody cracked up. It
was so irreverent. And if you hear what that clip was, where he's got the old man wants to hear the old kind of comedy where it's a set up and a punchline, right? He didn't do that and makes fun of that to this day. And that's why I think he's so unique. Didn't translate to Saturday Night Live, which you can understand in some ways, but I'm going to still stay by this. It's not much of it, but there's a few clips on YouTube. You could hear him do comedy in the 70s and 80s. It'll be the most unique, funny comedy that you've ever seen. I'm sorry.
I agree.
That screechy voice and all is a little different. It's not him.
That's later, and I never liked that. You heard a little bit of that old man coming through. The seeds of that character.
Oh, this guy here?
What was that? That didn't make any sense to me. That makes no joke. That's what... It's no sense to me. It's what? How's there a joke there? That to me makes... He's a lunatic.
Right. But he went even further, and I hate that character. I don't know. I never... the one he does now.
Voice.
Now he does the thing, the Gilbert Gottfried persona.
Right. Which is not... I mean, I guess... Do you think failing on Saturday Night Live had some effect? I mean,
Maybe.
I don't know, you
Maybe.
know, where that came from.
It's not like he didn't become successful with
Right.
that whole new persona. He
Right.
was very successful, but not as funny as when you and I saw him. Sorry.
Unless it's the mirror of just like, you know, we saw him a couple of times when we were teenagers and it was new to us. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
We went a lot though,
Yes.
right? Because we were just a couple of losers going to comedy clubs
A lot.
instead of out with girls. So I think we were pretty seasoned for as young as we were.
Yeah, and we were crying.
Yeah.
It was so funny. But anyway, so sometimes it doesn't work to translate to sketch comedy. So it is a unique thing because, you know, Jimmy Fallon is terrific on his show. I didn't think much of him on that Saturday Night Live at all.
No, I didn't either. I thought he was a poor man's,
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler, who I was never thrilled about either. So.
Exactly. So it's interesting what you like, what you don't like. That's what's the beauty, I think, of Saturday Night Live is that they've done it such a way that they've grabbed characters that have gone on to careers, and you may like or not like what they did on the show, but you know that they were on the show.
Yeah, I just thank goodness they have stopped. Remember that trend where you come up with a character and suddenly it's a movie?
Yeah.
And it's a horrible movie like Pat?
Yes, exactly.
And Night at Roxbury, and oh, God,
yeah,
I'm so
and it
glad
was,
they stopped
yeah,
that.
just the one joke sketch that became an hour and a half of pain, you know. The last good one, what's a good... I mean, even that Rob Schneider.
Well, Wayne's World. Wayne's World was a success.
Yes,
that
Wayne
was a huge success.
Coneheads were no good.
No.
Wayne, what was that guy? Rob Schneider did like American Gigolo or something or other.
Yeah, one of the right. I forgot the name, but
that didn't work. Okay, so we'll get back, and that was just a little preamble to what we're going to do now. We're going to dive in the next section of this show into a best team of all time. Who would be your all-star team for Saturday Night Live? So we'll dive into that when we get back. Before we do, I did want to just let you know that you can listen to the podcast anytime you like and hear any of our shows at everythingoldisnewagain.biz, everythingoldisnewagain.biz, and communicate with us, oldnewagain at AOL.com, oldnewagain at AOL.com. Who's your favorite all-time Saturday Night Cast member?
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting that. I was not expecting that.
Well, rummage through your brain a little bit. Would it be the original crew?
Boy.
Would it be... And we're talking about now, I think clear about it, not the career after Saturday Night Live, on the show. Because some of them have done great after and not so good on the show.
Oh, God, it's hard to do one.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, I guess I have to say Chris Farley.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's not one bad sketch I don't think he ever did.
What about, you don't think Will Ferrell was like, he was perfect for that show, wasn't he?
That's true, yeah.
And he didn't care. He'd lift his shirt. He didn't matter what
to
he
me,
looked like.
the biggest belly laugh, though, for me, was watching Chris Farley.
It was.
Just the laugh out loud. I mean, Will Ferrell was just hilarious, but... You know, you kind of watched him and admired what he was doing, but Chris Farley was just like just belly laughs.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that he wrote himself. He was in the era where they wrote a lot of their material. Yeah. You know, poor guy passed away way too soon. All right, we'll be back, and everything old is new again. Pick our all-star team.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
It's Saturday Night Live!
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. We're talking about Saturday Night Live, and now this part of the show is going to be where we select an all-star team of all the performers on Saturday Night Live. We have a pool of those characters, and we get to pick probably about 6, if we have the time, characters to see. If you were to start your Saturday Night Live team, who would you start with and where would you go? I will give the first draft pick to David Cohen. First, we're going to go...
Well, we have categories, right?
Category. We're going to do one at a time. I'll just lay it out now.
Right.
The first category is your straight man. Who would be your straight man? Which would be the one that's not so funny, but it does, sets things up, interviews people. Who would be the person you would think you would be most attuned to that?
I would say 3 people come to mind.
Okay.
Right? David Spade, Phil Hartman, and Daryl Hammond, I would say Phil Hartman.
Okay.
He'd be my pick.
That's a great pick. I would have picked Phil Hartman for sure. And he was there a long time. Unfortunate death. Terrible, crazy story about the wife going off on him. He was so talented in being a straight man. Now, he's not a guy that's going to do the Killer Bees or going to do some... He did Tonto. I mean, he was Frankenstein in that Harry and that Tonto. And
I mean, this is a difficult category because I don't think you recruit someone to be the straight person. It's just someone who becomes sort of like the spokesperson. They could do characters. They're funny.
But he would be the game show host. He would be the setup person.
And the other thing is, Will Ferrell was also a straight man because he was a Jeopardy host. He played those sort of straight man characters as well as the wacky characters like the cheerleader.
Correct, but I would hold him off to other categories because that wasn't the best thing he did. He does other things better.
So who was your pick?
My pick will be Daryl Hammond for sure. He was on the show.
Also very
14
strong.
years and some invitations, and that's a different category. But this is just the straight
Still
man.
Still the best Clinton ever.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
But he was one of these ones that just. And by the way, did you know that after Don Pardo passed away, he's now doing the introduction to Saturday Night Live?
That's Daryl Hammond?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
A little something there. Okay, it's a little out of order. Let's look at, musical. Who is the most musical person that you would want to have on your show? You had the Blues Brothers all the way down to, all kinds of musical guests, Adam Sandler and Jimmy Fallon playing the guitar. And who would be the person that you would say would be the one that you would want to be your musical representation?
Look,
even Eddie Murphy did music.
Right. I'm not a big fan, but I would have to say it's got to go to Adam Sandler. He did the most music on the show. I mean, the Hanukkah song and Lunch Lady song and that was his thing.
Okay, and I could say one of the Blues Brothers, but I don't want to. I want to save those picks also for some other category. So I would say I'll probably lose on this one, but I'm going to say Joe Piscopo. He didn't do a lot of music, but what he did with that Sinatra, and he did some others, but that was very was memorable. So he's okay. I'll take him in my team as the musical performer. Next, we have physical comedy. Who would be your pick? And in physical comedy, slapstick, running around the stage, bouncing off the walls, that kind of comedy.
It's the same guy who I said before was probably my all-time favorite, which was Chris Farley.
Chris Farley, and why? What do you feel so, you really are jumping on this guy, and that's great. Why do you like him so much?
Well, because he's the one, I think, of all the cast members I've seen over the years that just elicited these real belly laughs, this visceral laughter that came out from watching him. There were so many really funny and talented people, men and women, on this cast, but I've never had such a consistent reaction to what Chris Farley did to any other character.
All right, okay, you can go for that. That's a physical comedy. I'm going to go with John Belushi.
Yeah, also, how can you deny that? John Belushi, right?
He was quite a physical comedian himself, with the samurai and bouncing all over even doing the Blues Brothers, doing the cartwheels. Right. I mean, this guy was.
How about when he did? The blues singer who he would imitate.
Oh, Joe Cocker.
Yeah.
What about also he would be on the news and he would do, he'd get all riled up about a subject and he'd throw himself on the floor. All right, so let's move along because we're running out of time. How about most versatile?
So somebody who's good at everything. Music,
done all
funny.
Of these categories, can be funny, can do impressions, can have some music involved maybe.
All right, I'm going to throw you a curveball on this one because I've thought about this a lot. Also, I want to give an honorable mention to Gilda Radner on the physical comedy too.
Oh, good, yes.
But I would say that the most versatile for me, believe it or not, Tina Fey.
Interesting. Yes. Tina Fey. Where do you get that from?
Well, think about it. One of the best news people that they've had.
Well, this is the question.
She was a head writer. She was one of the best writers they ever had. She was really good at physical comedy, impersonations. I mean, she saved. You want to talk about people that saved Saturday Night Live by doing the Sarah Palin impersonation?
Well, my only comment would be I would have saved her for the news. That's all. Because I would want to have her be doing my news. But I understand. That makes sense. I'm going to go with Will Ferrell.
Ferrell.
Say it again.
I don't know who Will Ferrell is. You mean Will Ferrell?
Will Ferrell. It's F.A. Ferrell. Will Ferrell. I think he could do music. He could do physical. He could do straight man. He could do, of course, a comedy.
Yeah.
The guy's over the top. He's my Chris Farley, and in that I think that he's hysterical doing whatever. And I think he's perfectly suited. As you see some of his movies, he's perfectly suited for a skit comedy.
Yes,
and he's not afraid to do anything. Let's go to a news person. Then you're not going to have Tina Fey. So who's your news person?
I would say that my news person would be. I'm just checking through my. This was not easy.
No.
Checking through my notes. To me, the best one ever is Seth Meyers.
Interesting. And he still does that to this day on his show.
That's it, right. He got a whole talk show out of it.
And he doesn't even do stand up. He does basically behind a desk when he starts the show.
Yeah. But there were other great ones. But
I'm going with Dennis Miller. I just thought that he was very creative with his wordplay.
He did the whole video thing. He was very innovative with that.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's great.
Okay.
How about impressionists? Who's the best impressionist? And not just one impression. We're talking about somebody who's going to do the impressions for your group.
I would say.
Hey, why are you getting the first selection all the time?
I know, because you're giving it to me. I'm taking it. You're throwing it at me. I'm going to take it.
All right.
Dana Carvey for me.
Okay, that's who I was going to take. But yeah, Dana Carvey did a lot.
There you go. We agreed.
No, I can't take that, so I'll take Dan Aykroyd. He did Tom Snyder. He did Julia Child. He did Fred Garvin, male prostitute. He did a lot of impressions.
When you say impressions, though, you mean of actual people?
Yeah, I do.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Who else? That's Daryl Hammond did a lot of impressions. I don't know. I'm going to stick with. I'm going to stick with Aykroyd on that. And then finally, we've got who created the most characters. The most characters that you enjoy.
To me, there's only one that was the most successful and most prolific in terms of creating characters was Mike Myers.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and that's
hard
my
to
pick.
argue
That's
that.
my pick.
Yeah.
So now who? Now
I have to pick somebody else. So if it wasn't Mike Myers,
yeah, that's going to be me because I got to get one that I could go first. But yeah, he was tremendous.
I would say, as far as characters go, if it's not Mike Myers, I'm going to say Kristen Wiig.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Kristen Wiig. I was going to go see Eddie Murphy had quite a number of characters too.
He did too, but Kristen Wiig was. I just.
All right, so your team is Phil Hartman, or you've got Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, Tina Fey, Seth Meyer, Dana Carvey, and Kristen Wiig.
Can you see which era I'm most favorable to? I didn't even realize that.
Think about that. Yeah. I'm going with Daryl Hammond.
Good. Yeah.
I then have Joe Piscopo.
That's a musical.
All right. John Belushi.
Yep.
Will Farrell
as the most versatile.
Right.
Yep.
Dennis Miller doing the news.
Good choice.
Dan Aykroyd with the impressions.
Yep.
And I've got Mike Myers.
Right.
So I think either of those casts, but those are all-star casts.
Yes.
That really would put
and of course we're
on
leaving off so many good people.
How about the bad? Do you have any people that were just not so very successful at this show?
Did you know that Robert Downey Jr. was a cast member? How weird is that?
That is weird. I think he was like 21 years old, and I didn't know he was even involved in comedy. What do you think?
Dan Aykroyd's brother was on. Did you know that? You must know that. You're an Aykroyd fan.
Yep, but not so good. So
I don't remember
Jim Belushi was on.
There were a lot of brothers.
Yeah.
Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray's brother.
Yeah, also it's no good brother teams. It's usually right. It's usually a problem. Who else? Christopher Guest was really good on the show, but just 1 year.
Right.
So what goes on there? All right, we'll be back next week and enjoy more of America's pop culture on Everything Old is New Again. Who's your favorite Saturday Night Live team? Let us know. There you go, from the Night at the Roxbury, that theme song. I enjoyed the song. I like that skit. The movie
wasn't
horrible.
a movie.
The skit was kind of funny,
sure.
And they ran that maybe about 7,000 times with different guests. I mean,
when they're motioning me, you, me, him, me. Right.
And I think Jim Carrey did it best with them. If you remember, he joined them. So one thing they always do is they keep that skit going, though, too long. Like it's on the 23rd episode,
Exactly.
like, okay, we get it. But anyway, Saturday Night Live, it's worthy of the Hall of Fame of television, that's for sure. And I'll give it a shot this year. And
you should check out the new cast. You really should.
Let's see what happens. I will definitely do that, and maybe we'll end up doing more shows on Saturday Night Live if we have the inclination on Everything Old is New Again.
Let's do a sketch on the radio. Let's do a sketch on the radio.
All right, we can do that. Yeah, that's not bad. I dress Will Fowl start off.
Yeah, get Will Ferrell, too. He's available.